Hello, I'm Jessie the Sleepy Koala and welcome back to another Bookmas video. Today, I will be bringing you the top 10 books that I read in 2021 that were my favorite. These were the high-class, top-tier, top-shelf books that I read this year. There are a lot of really good books that I read this year, and not all of them made this list, but these were by far not the only good books I read, but they were the best books that I read. First up, coming in at number 10, we have the Chobits series, and I have misplaced number 1, so I'm going to hold up number 2. This is a series about a teenage boy who lives in a world where there are AIs that look like humans. You have everyone from personal assistant type persicums, as they are called, to laptops, which are just little chibi people that act like a laptop. It's all a bit difficult to describe instead of just reading about it, but the basic premise is that in the society there are AIs and they come in a humanoid form. But the story starts with our young hero Hideki finding a persicom in the street, just discarded, who we later start calling Chi because that's the only word that she says. It is quickly apparent that something weird is going on with Chi. She seems to be different to the other persicoms who are very machine-like and very obviously machines, whereas she seems to have something else there. At least as a reader, that is very obvious. In the story, Hideki is a little bit slow on the uptake for this. Early in the story, we are introduced to the idea of Chobits, who are a higher level AI who are thought to be able to think and feel for themselves. And the thought is that Chi might be a Chobits. I have not actually gotten too far into this series yet, but I am loving it. I think the story is really interesting. The characters are really interesting. Chi is such a heartwarming character to read and to watch her learn and grow and to see what's going on with her story, because there's more to what she's doing than just going through a slice of life type narrative. There's things in the background that start getting brought up pretty quickly about what happened with her previous life, and it's this giant mystery. As of filming this video, I am 3 volumes in. I have 7 with me from the library, and the hope is to get through all 7 before I have to return them. They are very quick reads. Like, literally, I sit down and pick one of these up, and an hour later, I'm through the whole thing. I've always found that manga is a really quick read, and this is no different. There's several questions that always come up in these types of stories, and they are the very interesting ones. They are, can AIs be alive? Can a human fall in love with a machine? And can the machine love them back? And this story definitely looks at all of these questions, and it's a little bit heartbreaking in a way how it does, because you can, like, the readers can tell that there's more there with Chi. She's not just a machine, and she is looking for that person who will love her, and she thinks that it's Hideki. And then Hideki goes through a couple of different steps and gets to the point of thinking, well, I can't fall in love with a machine because it's a machine. So you now have this opposing tension of Chi wanting Hideki to be the one who loves her, and Hideki not thinking that he can fall in love with a machine, yet he also sort of has feelings for Chi. It's all very messy in the funnest of ways, and you just want to root for everyone, and you feel so much for all of the characters in this. My kitty cats are at the door. I will say, my one problem with Chobits is that it does deliberately sexualize young females for the sake of it. And I know that's a very big part of manga, and it's a part that makes me uncomfortable, not enough to not read it, but particularly because Chi wakes up with no memories, no understanding of how to do stuff, and she is very childlike because of this. It just kind of adds that extra layer of not, like, a bit squicky to it. And I I have no issue with her and Hideki ending up in a relationship or things like that. It's just things that happen in the narrative deliberately push Chi towards sexualization, and I kind of wish that they didn't, but that's the story that's being told. If I was a smarter person than I am, I would have gotten all the books before I started this video, and not after I got halfway through it, because that was very dumb. Coming in at number 9, The Girl in Times Square by Paullina Simons. This book was fascinating and heartbreaking. It's about a girl who wins the lottery and then immediately finds out she has cancer. As well as this, her best friend has gone missing and she doesn't know where she's gone. So our main character, Lily Quinn, is trying to find out what happened to her best friend, beat terminal cancer, and also just not think too hard about the fact that she's won the lottery, because she sees this almost as a sign of bad luck, and she doesn't actually cash in her ticket for quite a long time throughout the book and just keeps thinking about the numbers instead. Everything to do with the cancer side of this story was heartbreaking. Reading through what she experienced and her relationship with her family, that was really hard. And I'm sure it just pales in comparison to what people actually go through. So it would be even worse for someone to actually experience what Lily and her family go through during that time than it is even just to read about it. But this is probably the first book I've read that has given a really good insight into what that experience is like, and really shows the horror of what this type of disease does to both a person and their family that looks after them. The mystery side of this book I thought was going to be bigger, considering it's what's advertised on the back of the book. But it's very backloaded, and then I found it to be bizarre. The conclusion of this mystery was really weird. I don't know if I would say it was bad, but it really went from 0 to 100. And this is in a mystery where a girl goes missing, but it went from 0 to 100 really quickly. And I don't actually know how much I liked the twist and the ending in general, but I liked the rest of the book. I liked learning more about Lily as a character and seeing how she beat cancer, how she dealt with her day-to-day life, how she eventually cashed in on this lottery money, and then what she used it for. It was a very good and fascinating and really terrifying in the sense of like healthcare issues, like slice of life type of book, just with a mystery thrown in as well. And a lot of the lead up to the mystery, particularly when Lily gets into her own family's past, that is really interesting. But it's just the ending. Also, Lily's mother in this is just such an awful person, and I can also see why she's an awful person. But God, she is such a terrible person. The exact type of person that you just never want to inflict on anybody because of how toxic she is to her own family. Book number 8, What If Elephants by Sara Gruen, with the lovely movie cover on this book, which honestly, I think this is a nice cover. I think this is it's obviously a movie cover, but as movie covers go, I think this one's quite nice. This is a book about a man reminiscing on his life when he was in the circus. He joined the circus out of dropping out of veterinary school and became the man who watered the elephants and who helped to deal with the animals. In it, he falls in love with one of the main stars of the show. However, she is in an on-again, off-again, not very healthy relationship with the ringmaster and owner of the traveling circus. So they have to deal with this guy I wasn't sad to see bad things happen to. That's probably a really awful thing to say, but This is a romance novel, and I really liked it. The romance between Jacob and Paullina was really nice to watch blossom because they clearly really liked each other, but they had this massive problem of a person in the middle who also was just clearly a bad person, and that Paullina deserved so much better. But this was set back in the 20s? 30s, early 30s. And it's not like she had that many options as a woman to be able to leave this guy and go do other things. Along with that, the circus was her life. That's what she had been doing for most of it, and is where all of her skills were. So she could always try and join another circus, but this was also the era where I think a lot of traveling circuses started breaking down. At least that's the way it's portrayed in the book. I will say, and I had no issue with this, but I know it is something that other people might, there is animal cruelty in this book. The fact that it's just a traveling circus that has animals in and of itself has problems with it, particularly circuses back then, where they really didn't care that much about the environments that they were putting these animals in and what they were putting the animals through. But on top of that, there is directed animal cruelty in this book, which is hard to read, and it is hard to watch in the movie as well. So I would just say going into this book to be aware of that. And if it is something you have issues with, either skip those sections or this might not be the book for you. But I did really adore this book. And not just because of the romance. I used to do circus things back when I was in university. I love it. I have always adored the circus and everything that they do in the circus. I have wanted to be able to do circusy things since I was a little kid. So when I got to university and there was a circus society, I just grabbed it with both hands and didn't let go. And I still love everything about the circus. And if the circus came to town, I would be there probably more than once. I went to a fairgrounds show with my husband a little while ago, and they said that they had a circus there, and I dragged him along. We're like, we're going to the circus, and it was a guy doing magic tricks, which was still fun to watch. Not quite what I was after, but I was adamant. It's like, if there's anything we're doing tonight, it's going to the circus. Out of everything else we could do, we're going to that circus that they say they have. Because I adore the circus. I really, really do. So reading a book that's focused around the circus was something that I really enjoyed. The other thing, my copy of this book actually had these pictures in it, and they're all the way throughout. And they're actual pictures of the Benzini brothers circus that have been taken throughout time. So it was really fascinating to be reading this fiction book about a circus that was going up against the Benzini brothers while also seeing real life snapshots from the Benzini brothers circus to not offset, to show off parts of what the story is talking about and to get that atmosphere and that mood in there. The other thing that I loved about this book is that the story is actually told through memories from a main character, Jacob, who is an old man in a nursing home. And in his nursing home, there is a circus coming to town and everyone's talking about it, and all the nurses are going on about people going to the circus, and he really wants to go see. And this is prompting him to have all of these memories. On top of that, he has a nurse who is named Rosie, who is the name of the elephant that is in this book. And Rosie is such a sweetheart, both the person and the elephant. And she treats him more like a young man than the other nurses do, and like the other patients act in the nursing home, because he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to think that he has to be there. And he reminisces about his old life and his meeting and falling in love with Paullina. And the thing that I really like is I've seen the movie for this. I saw it years and years and years ago when it first came out. The movie doesn't focus as much on the fact that this is an old man retelling this tale. He's in there at the start and at the end, I believe, but that's about it. Whereas in this, it's all the way throughout. We get to have these dual storylines, one of them of this old man reminiscing and the other one of the young man going through the steps. The very end of this book is not at all realistic, and you really have to suspend disbelief for it, but it's worth it. there's nothing wrong with suspending some disbelief, and it's the very end of the book. I just went, yep, okay, and closed the book, and that was the end. And I was okay with that, but I guess a heads up that you may want to go into the ending knowing that the realism does fall away a bit. You can tell that that was a book that I read early in this year because my Goodreads review is like a paragraph long, whereas the further throughout the year I've got, the more detailed I've gotten as well, whereas this one's just like a couple of sentences. Okay, book number 7, Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the second era of the Mistborn universe. This is the second book in the second era of Mistborn, and it follows our protagonist Wax and his friends Wayne and Marasi as they go through another adventure hijinks. This one is intrigue mystery based book, whereas the first one was very Western in style, and apparently that is very deliberate by Brandon. He wants these books to be different types of pulp fiction, so this is the mystery noir type book, and it's fantastic. The story in this book is so thrilling and compelling. It grabs you at the start with this mystery of what's going on and why this guy was killed and who by, and you have to follow the breadcrumbs throughout. And the thing is, like with so many Sanderson books, the second read through of this is so different to the first read through, and you're just like, damn, Sanderson, you've done it again. Huh. Damn, man. The ending of this book is explosive and heartbreaking. I feel like I've used that word a lot in this video, but it is heartbreaking what happens, but just so good as well. I also absolutely adore the background world building that's happening in this, because in my mind, it had been subtler than it actually was. But just what's happening with the city around our protagonists is really, really interesting to see. And Brandon just builds things so well and so subtly that you get to the end and suddenly everything comes together. And it's very much a, wait, what just happened? Oh yeah, no, I guess that's where it was going. That is definitely where it was going. And I love it. I love the atmosphere in this book. I love the plot and the chase in this book, and the reveals are stunning. Sanderson's reveals are so good, and damn, this book is up there with just one of the best reveals, maybe? Like, it's definitely one of the most impactful reveals, I think. The characters as well are great as always. We learn more about all of them. I think Marasi comes so much more into her own. Damn girl, go for it. Wax is Wax. Wayne is Wayne. We meet new characters that are so much fun and I love them so much. And there are definitely some like smaller twists and turns that I didn't expect that I really enjoyed as well. This is a fantastic book. Unfortunately, again, book 2 in era 2 of Mistborn. So you have to read book 1. Like, there's no way you can get out of reading Alloy of Law to then read this book, because otherwise you have no idea what's going on. But unless you want all of the spoilers for era 1 and maybe some confusion, you have to read era 1 first as well. It's my greatest annoyance, because I think Alloy of Law would be such a fun book for people to start the Cosmere in, but they can't because of spoilers.
Spoilers.
I did a whole video on entries to the Cosmere, and God, I wish I could have put this in. I'll link it up there for people who are interested. Please check it out. But if you are interested in Cosmere and you are interested in Mistborn, which era 1's fantastic, don't worry, we'll get there. This is a great book for when you eventually can get to it. The next book, number 6, is Putin, Prisoner of Power by Russell Finch. This is an audio series that I listened to through Audible. I can't remember if it was free or not, but I feel like it was. I'm going to go with it's probably free, and I'll put something on the screen to say yes or no. But this book was fascinating It was easy to read, super digestible, and I binged it in a single day. It goes through Putin's rise to power between, I think, the 1970s and modern day, and how he ended up where he did and what he did in between. It wasn't just a person speaking type audiobook either. It was one where you had the narrator and then it was interspersed with different interviews, which was really, really cool to hear. And something that I really appreciate is they got Russian interpreters for these interviews, not American interpreters who spoke Russian. And I really appreciate this. I appreciate that the culture that these interviews are coming from are still being represented by those who are reading this book. The main narrator wasn't Russian. I'm glad that they kept some influence of the Russian people in with this production. Although I found it super easy to follow and digestible, if you're already familiar with Russian, like modern Russian history, you might find this a bit basic, but I also think you're maybe not the target audience in that case. This very much comes across like this is being created so that people have a base understanding of where Russia was at and how Putin ended up where he is. And it does that. It does that very, very well. And I do highly recommend it to anyone who wants to know more about Putin or about how Putin came to be in power, because it is very, very interesting. Down into the top 5. Number 5, One Dark Throne by Kendare Blake. This book is the second book in the Three Dark Crowns series, and in my opinion, is the best one of them. Number 3 is also very good. This was just amazing. To give some context, because I think it's important, the first book very much focuses on characters and building up characters and their relationships so that readers can have fallen in love with them before the plot happens. The plot happens in this book. It doesn't really happen in the first book at all. But when you get to this book, the plot picks up and it's out the gate from the beginning. So much is happening and it's not exactly what you're gonna expect to happen either. In the first book, we find out about the 3 sisters, Arsenone, Mirabella, and Catherine, and how on their 16th birthday, they have to fight to the death to become queen. We've hit the point where they are now in the fighting to the death stage, and we're following all the characters as they do this. It's not all as it seems like it's going to be. Alliances are formed, friendships are broken, and a lot happens in between. This book was so good. I really enjoyed it, and particularly after the first one where I didn't enjoy it as much. I think on a reread, I'd love the book so much because I already care about the characters, so gimme that character work. But when I got to this one, I had fallen in love with the characters by that point, and it's giving me this incredible plot that they're going through. I'm in. It was so good. Now that we're at number 4, remember how I said I'd talk about Era 1 Mistborn? Well, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson is my next book. Number 4, The Final Empire. This is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy and is a fantastic starting point to the Cosmere. I would know this is where I started. At the moment, I am doing an Era 1 reread after doing my Era 2 reread earlier this year, because nothing says a good reread by doing things back to front. This book is very epic fantasy. It has a lot of build-up in it. The build-up is very interesting. You want to keep reading even though it is slower than some other books can be, because you just want to know what's going to happen. And you're just following these characters along and you just want to keep following them and doing what they're doing with them. This is about a heist, but it's more than just a heist. It's also a plan to topple the government and the god at the top of the government, known as the Lord Ruler. Kelsier and Vin, our 2 main characters, are an older, more wiser thief and his younger apprentice, who is a girl from the streets who trusts no one and has to learn to let people into her heart. And boy, does she do that. They follow two different paths in this book. Vin is becoming the spy of the team and gets to go all Pride and Prejudice on us and dress up in fancy ball gowns and go get secrets from the balls that the nobles have, where Kelsier goes round and murders a lot of people at nighttime because that's his specialty. This book has incredible twists in it. I did not see it coming. I did not see the things at the end coming. I could never have guessed the plot. It was incredible. I remember exactly when and where, down to the date and times that I finished this book the first time, because it was just so impactful on me. It was incredible. And even my reread, I read the entire last chunk of the book at once. I very deliberately stopped at a certain point because I knew it was getting too late and I wouldn't be able to get through everything else. And I knew this is the point. You either stop here or you read the last chunk of the book. You don't get any in-between options. Those are your only two choices because it's such a whirlwind. Brandon is known for his Sanderlanches of an ending where everything just finally comes together and then rolls like a snowball down the side of a mountain. And this book has that. This book very much has that, and you just don't want to put it down. You just don't want to stop reading and look away from the pages. I found myself walking around reading if I had to do stuff because I didn't want to have to put the book down. I just wanted to keep going. And that, I assume, is the beauty of an audiobook, but I read this in physical print. Number 3, Orfeia by Joanna Harris. This book is something I picked up on a whim while I was at the bookstore because I had a gift card. And look at how pretty this cover is. It's a gorgeous hardcover and it has illustrations inside. And the very start of the book sounded super interesting. So yeah, I was gonna pay money and buy it. And I'm so glad I did. It is a retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice, except it's a mother and her child, where the child dies and goes to the land of the Fae. The mother decides to follow to free her child and bring her back. The grief the mother feels at the beginning is so strong. And this is such a good look at what the death of a child could do to someone and the lengths that a mother would go to get that child back if she could. The world building is all over the place, and that's what it's meant to be. There is no rhyme or reason or logic to the way that the world of the Fae is set up in this, and the mother has to try and navigate it and keep things in mind so she doesn't get lost in it. But on top of all of this, we find out at the very beginning of the book that the Queen of the Fae once disappeared to the human world. And it's very clear that the mother is meant to be the queen. So we now have these two competing storylines. One with the mother trying to get her daughter and go back to the human world, and the other where the Fae people are trying to get their queen back. This book was devastating. It was such a good portrayal of grief and really hard to read through at some points. And I highly recommend it. It was so good. And the illustrations in it, these are just gorgeous. And they're all the way throughout the book. They represent the scenes that are happening at about that point in the book. So we get a visual representation of what we're reading. And it's so nice. And on some pages, there's tiny little illustrations. It's not always a full page. So we get that variety throughout. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. It is not very long, and it was a very quick read, but it was such a good read. Down to place number 2, we have Over Raging Tides by Jennifer Ellision. This book I found by accident. I wanted a pirate book to read that was light and fluffy, and boy, did I find a fantastic light and fluffy pirate book to read. This follows the ship the Lady Luck, a pirate ship where only women can be crew members. This book has little epigraphs in it, and God, do I love a good epigraph. And they're all the different rules for the Lady Luck. The most prominent rule that our main character, Grace, has to deal with at the very beginning of the book is no men on the ship. And the thing is, they come across a shipwreck. And there are these two boys who are still alive in the water. So Grace rescues them and breaks this rule. They could have killed the boys, except they're also searching for this mystical object or map. I can't quite remember what it is. And the boys can translate how to find it. So they have to keep them around while they go in this wacky hijinks of an adventure to try and find this object. Behind them is another pirate crew who are coming after them, who are also searching for the same thing and who wants to destroy the Lady Luck. It is such a fun story. I didn't want to put it down. It was an audiobook, and I struggle with concentration for audiobooks, but I just didn't want to stop. I just sat there and listened to the whole thing, and it was delightful. I cannot wait to read the other books in this series. I thought it was a duology, but apparently it's actually a trilogy. I have the first two books on my Christmas wish list because I have to reread the first one, then the second. I don't actually remember a lot of what's in books once I've finished them, unless I reread them a bunch, and I don't remember a lot of what's in this book. So I need to reread the first one, to read the second one, and then get the third one. So I've got the first two on my Christmas list. And then I'm so excited. They also have the most gorgeous covers, which is why I chose this book. I was looking at this book and another pirate book that was basically a reverse harem type situation. And I went with this one because I adored the covers. I couldn't get over how pretty they were. And that was such a good idea. I'll just judge a book by its cover and see it does work out, guys. It does work out. The last book, book number 1, top place of best book I read this year. Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This book was delightful. It was gorgeous. It was everything that I love about a Cassandra Clare book. The first half of this book was a character study, except she walked the line between exploring relationships and characters and not getting bored because there's not that much plot perfectly. I think she walked that line perfectly, and I enjoyed every moment of the characters and their relationships and what they were doing. And it really, really fed into the second half of the story where the plot did pick up, and you already love the characters by this book. This is the second book in the this is the second book in the Lost Hours series after Chain of Gold. So you already love all the characters, but this just helps you love them even more. And it helps you love different characters who maybe weren't as prominent in the first book or who you didn't love quite as much in the first book. And then you get to the actual plot and oh gosh, the things that happen. The things that have been set up for the next book and onwards. I can't wait to see what happens with that because characters make dumb decisions and it's almost funny watching it if you didn't want to scream at them. But it's also the enjoyable type of screaming. I enjoyed reading these things. The end of this book I found works a lot better than Chain of Gold. It was similar in structure, but I found that the twist of how they defeated the problem was much more realistic this time. It made a lot more sense. And I was much more engaged with the entire ending than I was the first time, where I did find my attention slipping in Chain of Gold a little bit, whereas this time I was here for the entire thing. While I'm talking about the Cassandra Clare books and the Lost Hour books in particular, I have to show off my new slipcases because they are so pretty. Look at these. Look at how pretty these slipcases are. It's like we have Cortana on one and then we have the locket on the other one for Chain of Iron. And then on the back, like, we have quotes from the actual books as well. This is Chain of Gold and this is Chain of Iron. I should have pointed that out. So that was the top 10 best books that I read this year. Let me know your top books in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you think, where you would rate these in your top books this year, or if you'd even put them in there. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and I will see you tomorrow for another Bookmas video. Bye!